City of Northglenn, Channel 8, keeping you informed of events in your community.
I'd like to call the special city council meeting to order. Joanna, would you call the roll, please?
Mayor Downing.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Carol Dodge. Here. Councilmember Snetzinger. Here. Councilmember Malika.
Here.
Councilmember Wayne Dodge will be absent. Councilmember Brown.
Here.
Councilmember Carrico.
Here.
Councilmember Whitman. Here. Councilmember Winnicke.
Here.
Thank you. I'd like to recess the special council meeting and bring to order the marijuana licensing board. And Joanna, would you call the roll again, please? I'm sorry.
Mayor Downing.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Carol Dodge. Here. Councilmember Snetzinger. Here. Councilmember Malika.
Here.
Councilmember Wayne Dodge is absent. Councilmember Brown.
Here.
Councilmember Carrico.
Here.
Councilmember Whitman. Here. Councilmember Winnicke.
Here.
Thank you. The only thing on the agenda is the transfer of ownership application, Be Good Ventures LLC, Resolution CR 131. So I would ask for a motion.
Move to approve.
Second.
Okay, any discussion? Okay, hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Okay. It carries as approved. Okay, so I will adjourn the marijuana licensing board and reconvene the special city council meeting. And I move to, well, I guess I could have adjourned and then moved into executive session pursuant to section 4.5 parent A of the City of Northglenn Home Rule Charter for personnel matters regarding council appointee evaluations. Okay. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, we are now in executive session. I'd like to call the City Council study session to order. Joanna, would you call the roll?
Mayor Downing.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Carol Dodge. Here. Councilmember Snetzinger. Here. Councilmember Malika.
Here.
Councilmember Wayne Dodge is absent. Councilmember Brown.
Here.
Councilmember Carrico.
Here.
Councilmember Whitman.
Here.
Councilmember Winnicke.
Here.
Thank you. First thing on the agenda is residential street program. Kent?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. We're here this evening to present the proposed residential street program for 2016. You have the information presented to you in your packet. Briefly, to talk about the program, in 2013 we completed the PCI, and based on that PCI rating, we go out and do treatments for the streets. Over the last couple years, we've expanded those treatments to more than just a mill and overlay, and to slurry seal and chip seal and crack sealing, and so we want to continue that effort and continue that program. We have identified these streets for mill and overlay and chip seal. You will notice that there is not any slurry or crack sealing on here, and that'll kind of go to the second point of the 2016 PCI program. We are doing more lineal feet in mill and overlay compared to 2014 or 2015. Last year we did 4,400 lineal feet of mill and overlay. We're proposing to do almost 5,900 of mill and overlay this year. Last year we did 8,100 lineal feet in chip seal, and this year we're proposing to do almost 6,200 of lineal feet. So we think that we've got a pretty good balance throughout the wards. I know that your map is difficult to read. I did print out another map if you have questions with respect to how it's kind of distributed. The one area that we have identified in the mill and overlay is Clare Lane, and that kind of completes that upper section up there. We've worked over the last couple of years to do some milling and overlays in that area, and so Clare Lane is kind of a long segment and not easily broken up. If we did just half of Clare Lane, then you'd kind of have everything surrounding it all completed in one little patch that wouldn't be done. So that kind of takes up a bigger chunk of our mill and overlay this year. Beyond that, I will move into is there any questions with respect to that?
Questions?
Okay. Part 2 of this is the PCI assessment. So typically, I think we've budgeted $450 for the per year for the residential street program, and we're proposing to do $550 on the PCI years. In the past, historically, it's been kind of a mesh with a couple engineers and a couple operations folks going out and doing the PCI, and you're all aware of the workload that the engineering department is doing in the projects that we have, and just trying to unify the PCI into a more, well, I guess, unified rating, and have either an engineering firm or a consultant prepare the PCI rating, or we're also in discussions with the University of Colorado at Denver, and they have a program that has engineering students that come out and perform that. And that actually, Daniel Martinez, who's one of our engineers, was a part of that program when he was at UCD. So that's what we're looking into. We are unaware of the cost. I mean, we've kind of had some proposals, of what it could cost. So we've budgeted $100,000 for that this year. And then after this year, we'll know moving forward into 2019 what that cost would be. Is there any questions with the PCI program?
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
I got a couple after you, Joe.
And you may have covered this in this meeting, but I'm going to ask you anyway. What's your cutoff at mill and overlay and chip seal?
We're really trying to identify those streets that are in the resolution that was approved by council. It's 70 or below, and so we're really trying to identify those streets that are 70 and below for that. And then it's basically an assessment of that street and the condition and traffic and loading and various other factors that we look into to determine what if it gets a mill and overlay versus another treatment. And since we've been in the last couple of years again using additional treatments, we're able to prolong the street. So I think it was a couple of years ago, it seemed like we were really behind, and I think we even talked about that at a meeting. And that year, I think we actually, council approved additional funds to kind of catch up. And so we did that, and we do seem to be making progress. And so even as we progress through this program, the mill and overlays, we're working with our new operations manager, Mr. Grace, and we're having the operations crew go back, and those streets that we've milled and overlaid within the last 7 or 8 years, our in-house crews are going back and doing the crack seal on top of those to even further prolong the life. So we are making progress, and I believe the program is moving in the right direction. And I hope I answered your question.
So 70 and below is a mill and overlay, or 70 and above?
70 and below is what we identify the road to be needs assistance or needs a treatment.
Oh, so you don't know if it's a chip seal or mill.
Right, and then that's when the staff goes out and identifies it. Is it longitudinal cracking? Is it alligator cracking?
Oh, okay.
Is there?
So there isn't a point where
Right.
you say no, this needs to be.
That's what
Okay.
Yeah, and then that's what we're trying to also do with the PCI of having a consultant or the students go out and perform that, because you kind of have a varying degree of people who are grading the roads. You have somebody, from an operations staff who may be familiar with water or collection, and he's rating roads the same as, a qualified engineer is. So, we're hoping to, again, unify that, and then when we have the 2016 PCI, really have a better idea of where our program is at.
I do want to make one comment, though. As much as some people complain about the roads we have in the city, I drive all over this city, mainly down Castle Rock, Highland Ranch, some of the higher-end neighborhoods, and trust me, roads down there suck. We're like driving on smooth lawn up here when you compare it to the other cities that are around us. Kudos to you guys.
Yeah, and thanks to our operations staff for, doing a great job of getting out there and preparing potholes. And I know that, kind of a side note, a couple of weeks ago, we presented the CIP budget, and, we talked about that infrared trailer, and that's something that we bought on a smaller scale that the staff has been utilizing to, reconstitute the potholes and stuff, and that's just been an excellent tool. And moving forward and having a larger tool like that is again going to give us more progress and make more progress on our program.
Kyle?
Yeah, I just was looking at the math, and it just didn't make sense to me on page 3 with the mill and overlay and the chip seal. The totals weren't adding up, and so I'm just making sure I'm not missing something. I'm at like 433 is my grand total when I do the math. So I just wanted to point that out to see if there needs to be a correction.
Are you talking about the actual worksheet that shows the spreadsheet
the top part
of the
with
roads?
Yeah, and it looks like the traffic control and testing and all that's about 10% of the total between 265 and 92. There's just some, you don't need to do the math.
I
now, but
apologize.
Yeah, just check it out, yeah.
I'll check that
Yeah.
and correct that if
Get back to
necessary.
me and let me know.
Yep.
I just had a $35,000 difference there for me, so.
Okay, and just let everyone know,
Yep.
rather than going to one person.
Yeah.
I'll probably just send it to David, and then he can disseminate that
Okay.
information if that's
Sure.
appropriate.
Yes, Kim?
So I have a couple of questions on the second page, or I guess it's, the third page, that chart page still again.
Yep.
What is this optional additions?
I'm sorry to interrupt.
Oh, go ahead, what is that? And then I have another question.
Sometimes when we get into the program, we and receive the bids, we have favorable bids, and so we were able to add additional streets, and so these are just additional things that potentially could be added to the program if necessary.
Okay. And then why would we be doing a more extensive repair with the mill and overlay rather than chip seal on streets? We have 43, 44, 52, 53 PCIs that are just getting a chip seal when all but Claire Lane, Lambert Lane to Roseanne Drive have higher PCIs.
Again, I believe that is a function of the previous PCI ratings, and when we visually go out, not only do we rely on the PCI rating itself, we visually go out and inspect these roads, and in our engineering opinion, that these are the roads that we have, identified as the most critical ones.
Kim, I'd just like to add to that a little bit. The PCI rating is very subjective. It's an old Army Corps model that they use, and it involves individuals going out and actually walking the entire length of the roads, and they look for things like longitudinal cracks, transverse cracks, potholes, how big the cracks are, any depressions in the pavements, any pumping in the pavement, and all those distress factors get thrown into an algorithm, and they basically solve for a number, and that's how you come up with these. But the program is only as good as the person walking the street and entering the data. And what we've found is it's best to try to have 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 people, and for the continuity factor to get as close as we can as far as that subjective rating goes. And if you only have 3 or 4 people and you got 110 miles of streets, it takes an inordinate amount of time. So the results is, as Ken mentioned earlier, we had a mix of 3 or 4 engineers. We had all of our supervisors from operations participating in the program, and the results are, unfortunately, somewhat a subjective model where you could have PCIs for streets that could be interpreted by one person at a 68 and another person at a 58 or a 78. So we only hope that we do it enough time, we develop a rating and it begins to equalize or come to equalize itself out. So we think right now the PCI that we have is a pretty good rating, but the streets deteriorate very quickly. And by a resolution, I think was attached to your memo, council required us to do this every 3 years. And we're proposing this year to have a consultant do that. And again, that'll be another good measure to see how staff has done it twice now in the past versus what a consultant would do.
Well, then how were, I mean, I understand that it's subjective, so how was this list determined based on, did you go back out again and look at all the streets with the low PCI? I mean, how was, because just as a resident looking at this, it doesn't make sense to me that we're doing more extensive work on roads that have higher PCIs, and then we have ones over here on the optional additions that are even lower. So I'm just trying to look at it from a residential standpoint, and it sounds like it's a guessing game to me.
Ken can chime in, but I think we tried to equal the mill and overlays for each ward and not focus on just one ward. And some of the streets, even though they had a lower or higher PCI, could be affected by a water main break and you had a big depression in the street. It could be affected that a part of the street just that was in a little worse shape got a mill and overlay the year before that. So you're trying to bring continuity to the street paving from end to end. There's 2 or 3 different factors of why it may not look like it makes sense here. But we do go out and look at every street. When you got the PCI rating, we're putting the program together, they'll go out and check it again before they do that. And there's enough streets here, so I think at the end of the day, what the biggest or the most expensive cost is the mill and overlay. We're trying to divide that up amongst the wards.
And specifically with Gilpin and Marion Way, those are streets that in last year we did slurries on other streets in that area, and there's an issue with the right-of-way and the sidewalk of where the gutter pan, and that's kind of a much larger issue of some ownership stuff. And so that also, affected of how we treat those virtually dead-end streets as well.
Carol?
She asked the questions that I would ask, and I would say, you can't give this to us if we can't explain it to the residents. So my residents are in Gilpin and Williams and Marion Way, so that one just stands out because the PCI is so low and the other ones are so high. So it's my same concern.
Right, and you'll see that the streets that we did in that same area last year may have rated lower or higher. I don't have the 2014, I only have the linear footage in front of me, but we did similar treatments in those areas last year.
So when we hire a consultant, do you have an idea of what that's going to cost?
We've received a few, preliminary costs, but until they, come out and we get a full scope of work on what that entails, we're kind of budgeting a little conservative.
Okay.
So I have a question. If we're going to hire a consultant, are we looking at trying to find some standards in which they all grade the streets and the roads, so it's not as subjective as it's been in the past?
So it's always going to be subjective. We're just hoping we get people that are trained, they've done this before and are trained well enough so that their interpretation of the street is reliable and consistent.
So there's no way to measure a hole and say if you have holes or dips or this or that, a certain length, and it's this number?
Nobody goes out there with a ruler, a stick, or a probe. They just walk out there with a clipboard and the type of distress, and they check it off, and that's all they do.
All right, is there any other questions? Thank you.
You got 104.
Oh, yes.
Okay.
The last portion of this is the 104th Avenue. So the city of Thornton is proposing to do their portion of 104th Avenue from Washington to Irma, and they contacted us a few months ago and said, would we like to partner with them? And of course we said, well, we'd have to check, and what's the cost? So they've estimated their cost to be around $275,000 to mill and overlay their section from Washington to Irma. So we have proposed that it would be the same amount, $275,000, to mill and overlay our section of Thornton. Currently, the PCI rating on that, again, subjective, is 64. And we've had, several calls throughout the last, 6-7 months for complaints on 104th and the drivability of 104th. So the 275 would be in addition to the 550, or you'd identify another funding source for that.
I'm okay with that, just because obviously that's a main material that people in Northglenn use all the time, and I've received some complaints on that section, so.
Any other questions or comments?
I was going to say, I think that it seems like it's feasible. I mean, we should be looking at our main arterials.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know who they went through to get that estimation, or have they put out?
We have not put out, a proposal has not been put out yet, but Thornton would be the prime on that, and we would, either do the IGA or a match with them. And of course, we would, send our engineers out and our team to do our own inspection and stuff as well. But
Working together.
yes, exactly.
Yep. Okay. Anybody else?
So council wants to include 104th in the program?
Yes.
Yeah.
All right, thank you very much.
Okay, well, what if I just stay here and invite Amanda?
All right, we can do that.
Would you like me to go first?
Yes.
All right. Good evening, Mayor and Council. We have tonight our 2016 proposed CIP. I'm going to start with the Parks and Recreation projects. We do have those divided into our two funds that we draw from the the Conservation Trust Fund and then the Capital Improvement Program. If you'd like, I can go through each of those, a brief summary of each of those projects, or I could just take questions.
Maybe a brief summary would probably.
Okay. So as you'll see on here, most of these projects you have seen before as in the 5-year CIP, or they're modified based on discussions we've had previously or that the Parks Board has had. First project is our Greenway Trail replacement. This is our standard concrete replacement program.
Water?
I'm okay for right now, but I may stop and
All right.
I'm trying to fight this cold.
Okay.
Thank you. The Greenway Trail replacement is our traditional concrete replacement program. We replace individual slabs, or in some cases longer lengths. Right now we're pretty caught up, so it's been individual slabs that have been cracked or heaving throughout our trail system. And the $50,000 has been keeping up with that. Generally, we get most of that list done each year. There may be a few that carry over from year to year. Second on that is the Northwest Open Space Facility Improvement. We've talked about this several times. We did remove the actual project from the 5-year last year and ended up putting just design costs in there. We hadn't gone anywhere with the design process previously. At this point, we have sought grant funds for the design. We did receive word we are going to receive those funds. We will accept them next Monday morning, and then we'll kick off the design portion of that project. We do think that the project has a good opportunity for future grant funds, would be eligible both for GOCO funds and Adams County Open Space funds. We would likely make those applications in the fall of next year, and then but depending on the timeline, I believe GOCO is in the summer, and then the Adams County Open Space opportunity would be in August. Moving on to the general fund, emergency park repairs. Again, we've had this $25,000 in the budget each year. We only spend it if it's needed. I believe this year we've spent about half of those funds year to date. We use those to replace things that are broken unexpectedly so that we don't leave our parks in disrepair or have to wait for that CIP to catch up, in which case sometimes we can't get the equipment we need to make those replacements. And it makes for costlier repairs in the long run. Irrigation central control really isn't changing at all, other than we had phased this project. It's been in process for, I believe, 2 years thus far. We're proposing that the last 2 years of that project be combined into a single year, and that we finish that out next year. The tennis court repair and construction, this is a new project. You see repair and construction as the title because we are expecting over time that there will be some reconstruction. For 2016, the only proposal is repair of the Wyco courts. We renovated the Danahay courts, I believe, 2.5 years ago, and that acrylic just only lasts so long. The Wyco carts are in need of significant repair to the acrylic.
Use of tennis courts.
We get a decent amount of use. I mean, one of those spaces, you're not going to have 50 people using it at once. You have 2 players on a court at a time, and we see regular use of those courts. Is it bombarded? No. We do get some league play. We haven't had great league play at Wyco because our courts aren't in great condition.
So do we need 3 courts now?
You can only do league play with a 3 court, so that's our only opportunity for league play. It's also a lit court, which is a big deal to people.
It is a big deal, right.
And then the parking lot repair, this is a new project that you'll see on here. We're proposing, and Kent can chime in if he has anything. We did ask for Public Works to weigh in on this one for us, to make some repairs to the parking lot at both the Recreation Center and at EV Rains, just due to disrepair over time. Sir.
Questions?
I have a stupid one. Sorry, I'll go on record with that. Where's Larson Park? Is that under the Conservation Trust Fund, or where is our?
So Larson Park is in process now, so it's a 2015 project.
Oh, and we think it'll be completed.
Well, we don't, it'll be carryover if it's not complete.
Okay.
So it wouldn't be in this in the 2016 proposed.
Okay, great, thank you.
But it will come in as carryover. You will likely see some of that as carryover into 2016. We're aiming to get as much done as we possibly can during 2015 so that we can spend down our CDBG funds. We've been having conversations with the CDBG folks. I pointed at Brooke because he's been helping facilitate some of those conversations. But we're under contract. We've moved through the design process. We should have our final design by Friday, and be ready to order equipment and move forward with that project.
Great, thank you.
You will see mobilization starting this week. They will be starting to put up their construction fences and begin the demo of that space.
Okay, great,
Kyle?
thanks.
I have a couple questions. Is the Melody Pocket Park design, is that through Parks and Rec, or is that on you guys, or whose budget is that?
That was through us, but I believe based on last year's conversation, we proposed removal of that project.
Okay, it's in my packet that I have here. It's in here for $35,000.
I apologize, I thought we had
2016.
removed it, so I didn't put it in my memo.
And then
Unless there's any disagreement with that, the proposal would be to remove that.
I just had a question too. On the next page, it's talking about the splash pad.
Yes.
The Kiwanis splash pad. And I guess the only concern I would have is I love the Kiwanis pool and I love what it offers our community. I'm just wondering if that's the best location for a splash pad. I wonder if since we already have some, a draw for the community to the pool, as if a splash pad might be better used in a different part of the community to draw people to a different park rather than to the Kiwanis Park. And I'd say that just because I'm having a tough time envisioning, a legitimate splash pad at Kiwanis, just with the location of it. And I'm thinking about, Arvada has a beautiful splash pad. I don't know if you've seen it out there off of Ralston Road.
They do. It's very nice.
It's very nice. And so when I think about splash pad, I'm not quite sure if that's the vision. I just have a tough time envisioning it at Kiwanis. And so,
So I believe we have that as a 2017 project, just for everyone else, that's why you don't see it on your summary tonight. Planned in conjunction with a renovation of the bathhouse. The space certainly is in need of improvement. The reason that we had proposed that there's not a leisure pool component, and in most pools that are built today, there's almost always a leisure pool component. So we're looking at that as an opportunity to provide an interactive experience for kids that are at Kiwanis. We are looking at expanding that space, so not within the existing space. I didn't bring a picture with me, but if you'll bear with me, there's the baby pool, and then there's the park, and there's kind of the fence takes a jog. The intent would be to move out into the park space slightly, take that space as a splash pad space with above ground elements. So your traditional fountains, as well as some pieces that filled and came down.
Have you seen what Arvada has done?
I have.
Because it is very nice.
I haven't seen
would love to see
Arvada's. I have
something
seen
like that.
others, but I can certainly take a look at what Arvada has done with theirs.
Yeah.
There's quite a
Very
few
nice.
that are really great amenities for the community.
And especially when you say, just moving it out a little bit. I mean, that to me just
well, I'm
wouldn't even-
struggling. I'm thinking
Yeah.
about parking too, because I do, like I said, I don't want to knock on Kiwanis. I just think that maybe this might be a better opportunity to draw people to a new part of the city or community, you know.
Or have two.
Or have two, yeah, that's a possibility too, but yeah, if you.
Or 3, since we have a little tiny one at Brains.
Yeah.
Right.
But Arvada, I mean, I don't know if anyone else has seen it, I know Mayor has, but
Yeah.
amazing.
It is.
Yeah.
Is it like Commerce City's new one?
Commerce Cities, I think, is more like a water park.
Yeah.
But they have a splash pad just adjacent to the water park.
Next to it. It's huge.
I haven't seen that one. I've just been to a Tuesday morning in Arvada. It was ridiculous.
It is.
Parking. So.
You're right. Okay. Any other comments, questions? Yes, Carol?
So I'm going to echo that because I'm kind of on board for that type of project somewhere else in the city too. So I think that's something to study a little bit more and think about, because I would be on board for doing a good splash pad idea, but maybe not in that location either. That doesn't excite me. So I'm just echoing that one. But my just quick question on the tennis courts is that since we completely redid Danahy last year, how much of it's like 180,000, I think? How much of that is for repairing that?
So, sorry, I'm going back to my sheets. So 180 is the 5-year. That includes the reconstruction of Wyco, not
It's all
Danahy.
that.
There's
It said in there was a
little pieces for just the patch that's required every 3 to 5 years.
Okay, so that's just a nominal
Absolutely.
amount of money. Okay, that's it.
You're talking about less than $10,000 of that total amount would be for Danahy.
But
And
that's
it's
like
just,
every year you have to do that?
they said every 3 to 5, every 2 to 5. It just depends on weather conditions, what the age of the court is this early in the game. We've already had warranty repairs made out there, but it's in great shape. We want to keep it that way. Once that acrylic starts peeling, it's hard to catch up with.
What are you gonna do with that, the east side of that, where the little roller rink used to be?
As
It's
we're
partially fenced off, but it's.
We're brainstorming some ideas right now with what could possibly fit at that space. We have not come up with a proposal to bring forward. The school has approached us with some ideas, and certainly if that goes anywhere, we'll have more conversation. Right now, it's just in a brainstorming stage around what their use of Wyco, or now the STEM school is, and how that building is oriented and their potential needs.
Do you foresee, with the improvements to the Northwest Open Space, being able to hold more events out at the fields, potentially movie in the parks, those types of things, having restrooms and running water?
We potentially would have more amenities for those types of things, yes.
Okay. Any other questions?
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
I will be presenting the public works portion of our CIP program. Just kind of hit the highlights here as well. The residence street program, we just finished discussing that, and that's 8:25 now. The traffic signal program, that's a reoccurring annual program that we do to maintain our street and traffic lights. The concrete program is the sister or brother to the Greenway Trail program, so those two work in conjunction together. It's another reoccurring program. 99th Street Avenue reconstruction, this has been on the list for CIP for several years now. We've been kind of kicking it down the road, and this is the year that we're going to do this, and you'll see later in the utility portion of it how we're going to combine this with another project on 99th as well.
There's a big thank you for that project.
Yeah, it's been a long time coming since I've been here, as long as I've been here, which isn't too long, but it's been on the radar. So this is the year we're going to get that done. Marketplace pedestrian bridge assessment. That's assessment, obviously, of our pedestrian bridge. Nura may be helping us out with that project as well.
Is there a specific reason for that?
When we get our bridge analysis from CDOT, they provide that, and they've identified that it needs to be taken a look at.
Okay, thank you. That's why this would be the answer was.
Yeah. Utility studies, these are 2 utility studies. One would be for the marketplace and one would be for Carl's Farm. I think, again, Nura will be assisting with the marketplace analysis on this. So we'll be moving ahead with that. Ralston House development, that's something we're all aware of and moving forward. So next year, we hope to get the A&E firm and plans for construction going for that project. The 104th grant intersection analysis, that was, I believe, driven by the council here to identify that area and take a look and see what improvements we can do around that intersection.
Are those going to be, is that 104th grant going to be an in-house, or are you looking at?
No, that'll be a consultant to do an entire traffic analysis, the movements, the configuration, because the current configurations on Grant don't align, so it'll be an alignment, it'll be the lights, it'll be turning movements, capacity analysis, it'll be the full meal deal.
With that analysis, I thought we were talking about the turn lane right there off of 104th and I-25 as well, the merge, and how difficult people have getting over if they want to take a left onto Grant. Is this going to be part of that analysis as well to try to look at that? I'm not quite sure what could be done. I just remember that was coming up and the dangers of people trying to get over 3 lanes on 104th really quickly if they want to take a left on Grant off of the highway.
Oh, so they're coming off the highway and they want to turn left?
Yeah, so when you merge off of 104th, well, no, we're talking, but that came up, that was a concern that came up when this whole intersection was.
This study won't look at that.
Okay.
That's outside this, because the study will look at how the traffic how the intersection manipulates the current traffic now and what improvements. And this came from, I think, a council request that there's for basically a southbound turn off Melody onto 104th going eastbound and having basically a permissive left-hand turn there. On a blank.
Say it one more time. Where?
Yeah, guys.
Yeah, this is.
South, may be, what did I say, Grant, excuse me.
Protected permissive.
Wait a second.
Yeah.
Grant Street, sorry.
And is this going to be a joint project with Thornton, considering half of that intersection is Thornton's?
So
This is-
we'll pay, our IGA with Thornton, we pay for the signals on 104th, they pay for the ones on 120.
Right,
So-
the
so-
signals.
Yeah,
This
so
is something not just the signals, right?
if
The
there's,
whole design of the intersection?
they will be informed of the study on the intersection. If there are any capital improvements for that, they're responsible for paying 50% of those.
So no, they're not going to help pay for the study, and the consultant, they're going to pay.
We can certainly ask them, this was driven by our council.
Any other questions? Okay.
The Justice Center, again, we're aware of that project that's moving forward, so next year, again, we're even continuing it's in its current phase, get an A&E firm, get some plans, construction, get ready for building something in 2017. Moving on to the wastewater water fund, the collection system rehab, that is a reoccurring program. Just a side note on that, we have made tremendous progress over the last, however long this program, I think it's been going on a few years prior to my existence, but not real existence, but existence here in the city.
It's been going on 6 years.
Yes, 6 years, thank you. And we are getting to the point now where we really are, the program has done a tremendous job and we have caught up, I guess, so to say, in the system. So with this year's program, we'll be, trying to identify that last little remaining areas, and then we'll be, we may be presenting something else to move that into a different program or something next year or something, if that's feasible. The water line replacement, this is in conjunction with 99th, so each year the water line replacement identifies minor areas for water line replacement around the city. In 2015, we decided that 99th Street, we didn't want to redo the road without fixing the infrastructure. So we spent $0 out of the water line fund in 2015, rolling that money over into 2016, with an additional $30,000 to complete the entire section of 99th Avenue. Part of that was done 2 years ago. The reason it's $130,000, we did go out for bid last year. The contractor provided us an estimate for that. He is willing to hold his price from this year into next, and this has been ran through the city attorney everybody as well. So we already have a bid and a contractor on board to do that for the 99th infrastructure. The high zone tank painting is a continuation. Last year we painted the interior of the tank. This year we would like to paint the exterior of the tank. So we've identified that. We're going to also do some cathodic protection testing in that. That needs to also be done to keep that tank in good condition.
Symbiotic protection.
That's the, David, help me. I'm sorry.
It's basically, I'm not sure how to put the term simply chemically, but it basically neutralizes the rusting action inside the tank. I think it's a cathode that they use, and they use a very low electrical current that neutralizes the hydrogen molecule, I think, so it doesn't rust. But maybe Steve can help.
So, in other words, it helps protect our water from getting rusty.
It protects the tank from
Thank you.
corroding.
My apologies.
That's okay.
We have it on the water lines, we have cathodic protection in all of our tanks. Anything that's got water and subject to iron, they'll have cathodic protection to it.
You have to do that on the outside, though? The exterior?
No, the cathodic protection is on the inside.
Oh, okay, I was gonna say,
It's a
it's-
continuing project, so, but they can only work on the cathodic protection when the tank is drained, and so we have to identify areas of, during the winter when we have low flow. That,
Are you sticking with the same color that's painted, or?
that's subject, right now we're developing the scope for that, but, there is an opportunity to, you can do whatever you would like. I mean, if you wanted to be a golf ball, you could get a golf ball. So, I don't know if that is something that, council would like to entertain and get some samples or proposals of what could be painted on there. I know that, I believe it's Westminster or something did a mountain scene or something on one of theirs. We could put a big N on it, I don't know, but it is a recoating of the exterior, and we have the opportunity to do whatever we want.
I think that's a good idea.
The two tanks that are up there have I think they're aqua color right
Yeah,
now.
they're blue on the bottom. and
One of them is
white.
Thornton's and the bigger one is Thornton's and the smaller one is ours. Is that something, because that's probably could cost a good.
I think the new PD's going up there, and so,
Yeah.
I think that's, or good chance it's going up there, I guess. So maybe that's, maybe something to think about, I think, something that's more
Complimentary.
appealing,
Yeah.
complimentary to
You
it.
never know.
Complimentary to the.
Yeah.
Is that something you would like us to explore in the RFP?
Is it gonna increase the cost
It'll increase the cost.
significantly?
Trying to maintain.
I'm not sure at this point. It will increase the cost, but.
Even if it's something simple like Northglenn or something, or the logo, or I don't know, something simple.
We can look at it.
Okay.
All right.
Visualize what it will look like after, whether it's 5 years too and needs to be redone, or whatever.
In the continuing of the project, we still have the same consultant who provided the specifications for the interior, and he will be providing the same information for the exterior as well. So it's not as if we need to go out and hire a consultant to provide those things. We can probably get a pretty good estimate here in the next month.
All right.
Okay. The last three just kind of all go together, lift station A, the headworks, and the decommissioning of the southern lagoon. And I'm not sure if David has anything additional to add on this, or if that's it.
Right, that's the project we're in it's just starting the design phase right now. I mean, working with the contractor to come up with a price, a guaranteed maximum price.
Questions?
What's the total 2016 budget?
You're asking the hard questions now. For total CIP?
Total CIP
For
for
what the memo is presenting us.
Jason's pulling it up.
You excited?
So citywide, total capital expenditures are 22.3 million.
Thank you.
Did you
Was
want,
that the question?
did you want just that one project?
It's fine.
Oh,
No,
sorry.
Never mind. I'll wait for that. Thank you.
All right, is there any other questions? Okay. All right, thank you. All right. Travis?
Hang on, for a quick second before we get off of the budget conversation.
Yes, sir.
So I provided a summary of changes
Yes.
to the original budget to you tonight. As we've talked, there's a couple more that we'll add. The public hearing's set for November 23rd for the proposed budget. So if you wanted another opportunity to speak about budget, that would be on November 16th. And so we just wanted to touch base to see if there was a desire to talk budget one more time, or come to the public hearing. We'll have the document prepared with all these changes. We can discuss, some of these minor changes from what was sent out September 21st, and then just move from there for the 2016 budget. Or was there a desire, to speak about it on November 16th?
Okay.
Again.
What
So
is the
that was-
Right, what's the desire of council? You want to hear it on the 16th or 23rd? No comments? Doesn't matter? Doesn't matter, so what is easiest?
Public hearing.
Public hearing, there you go.
At the public hearing?
Yep.
Okay, great.
It's easy, right? Okay.
That's good, thank you.
Thank you. Travis? Oh, I didn't know Deb was here, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Debbie Tuttle and I are here tonight to present an update to the Carl's Farm Dairy master planning process. We've been here before in May of 2015 when Council provided direction to undertake master planning activities for the Carl's Farm Dairy. And we presented a process at that time that was essentially 3 phases, one being a visioning process to establish what the city's interests may be in the property moving forward, development of the property, as well as kind of memorialize what the family's interests in their legacy and heritage and their development needs as they move out of the property into a development scenario with a private developer. Second phase of that we highlighted was going to be a technical assistance panel where we would consult with development experts from the Urban Land Institute. So it's a collection of private developers who provided us their perspectives on what the potential for the property was and the potential as compared to what the family's interests and the city's interests might be. We conducted that in August of 15 here, and we'll be providing some detailed explanation about that. The third phase of this was kind of this synthesis of the process of phases 1 and 2, bringing them together into a master plan. That master plan is still forthcoming in the next couple of months that the council will see in its detail there. We want to provide that update to that regarding the developers panel in that second phase of the process. As I mentioned, it's a multidisciplinary team of development experts that highlight developers in the arenas of transit-oriented development, residential development, public finance, infrastructure, etc. All coming together to give us their perspective on what the potential of this property was. Staff created significant kind of preface information that they all got as lead up to the workshop and panel, highlighting all kinds of certain existing known items regarding the property currently, as well as you recall, when we came back the last time here, highlighting and documenting what the city's interest in future development of the property would be. We took the panel and the group on a tour of the site, so they walked the site along with members of the family to get a better feel for the size of what we're talking about here at 60 acres, 60 plus acres at Carl's Farm. They conducted interviews with key staff to get a better perspective from regarding what the city's interests are and kind of some of those known skeletons that might be existing regarding development property into the future. And then conducted their own session of discussion and debate so that they could come to some conclusions and synthesis about what they thought as a collective private development body was the future and what would work on the site. some quick pictures of both the war room where we conducted the workshop at Maintenance and Operation Facility, and as well as some of our members walking with the family, Lloyd and the family here around the site. And in summary, we have some summary items from that panel, what they highlighted. One of the first things that the group highlighted, they kind of said, hey, move back from all these urban design scenarios, the land use scenarios. You've got to recognize that one of the most important things here is that the family gets consolidated representation. Instead of 7 different parties saying they know they have different interests, et cetera, you've got to consolidate that into some kind of representation for them that can speak with one voice about what they want. One of the second things that they highlighted was there are unknown infrastructure costs, to highlight both any traffic improvements to handle development for the site, water, sewer, and then stormwater as well. And those are kind of an unknown variable right now that a developer is going to need a better perspective on before they can make some kind of offer or development prospectus about the site moving forward. They also highlighted considerations for the M&O facility in terms of its proximity to the Carl's Farm, but also its front door proximity to the 124th East Lake Station. And we've had some discussions about that in the past, but I think it highlights that there may be further discussions that need to occur moving forward. And then finally, they gave us their feedback on land use considerations, obviously highlighting that there's strong potential for true transit-oriented development just based on its proximity of the northern latitudes of the Carl's Farm site to the coming transit station. Highlighted that the middle latitudes of the property are probably prime for residential development of product type that the city may currently not have. And then the ever-present front portion of the site along 120th there's agreement that there's potential for approximately 50,000 square foot of commercial development in that proximity. And so that was their feedback to us at the end of the day, at the end of the workshop. And so from that point, we've done some follow-up things that Debbie's going to talk about that we've taken on as a result of some of the discussions that day.
Sure. So if you recall, one of the things that they said that really needed to be done first was identifying one person to speak for the family. And that was done. We had a follow-up meeting which included all 4 sisters, so 3 of them came from out of the state, as well as the daughter that lives on the site in Lloyd, Karen's husband. And they all decided that Karen would be the spokesperson for the family and would communicate for the entire family. Also understanding one of the other things that they wanted during that process was to make sure that they had a good attorney to help them through that, and also a broker that was representing them, and or a seller's rep that was assisting with them that came out of the ULI panel. To date, so when we talked about that with the family at the follow-up meeting, they agreed, of course, Karen being the spokesperson, they agreed to hire an attorney, and they agreed that what they wanted to do was to interview 3 different brokers. 2 of which that they had been working with over the years, brokers that had been contacting them for several years. So they asked me to set up interviews with both of them, as well as a seller's rep, which was Cushman and Wakefield. So I set up interviews with all 3. The 4 sisters did interview all 3 for afternoon, and they decided on Cushman and Wakefield. I got an email from them just this afternoon. The contract is being finalized probably tomorrow. That's what the estimated time is. The attorney is just dotting some of the I's and crossing some of the T's, so that should be done tomorrow. They hope to have a marketing brochure out within the next 2 weeks. So that process has gone extremely smooth. I feel like all the comments that we've gotten back from the family is that they felt very, very pleased with the process, very comfortable with the process. We also got very good feedback from the ULI panel as well as the consultants that we've been working with. I think that says a lot, and I commend the staff, the planning staff specifically, for putting this together. I would encourage you to take a look at the notebook and the consultants put together, because there was a lot of work done there. It was very, very impressive. and a very effective process that I don't think we've ever done here in the city, but I would highly recommend it for us for future projects going forward. But the ULI panel was extremely helpful in guiding staff and helping us know what questions that we should be asking and what the next steps we should be taking, one of which is the infrastructure study, which was brought out, as Travis had just said, that is in the 2016 CIP for $150,000. Did I forget anything?
No, those are our near-term next steps that we've taken as a result of that panel. And what we're moving forward with the council on the council side and constructing this master plan. We'll draft a master plan in the coming months. We'll review it with the family, because this has always been our consideration, that we walk arm in arm with them about making sure that we're not saying anything representing anything that they don't want us to represent for the future expectations of development. And as a result of the representation by the family, or the family's representation with the seller's representative, we'll be making sure that we run it through that, as to not, in a sense, the master plan, so it doesn't scare off any development potential. And anything that we solidify inside a document, a policy document that we've been creating, which would be this master plan. And then finally here, we'd be looking at council review as well. We'll distribute this to council, make sure everybody's happy with the perspective that we're putting out there to the private development community, and hopefully it will act as the guidance that we had planned.
Great, thank you. Questions, comments? Carol?
Can you share who any of the developers were that were at the panel?
Yeah, we had an all-star pack here. Many of the staff knew some of them as well. Let's see, we have Mr. George Thorne with Mile High Development. James Godwin was with Wilson and Company, was one of the public infrastructure consultants. We had, let's see, Mr. Bruce O'Donnell was the chair of the workshop that day and kind of the public finance expert. We have Mike Kabuti, who is with Cushman and Wakefield as kind of a seller's representative perspective on how to represent families, these kind of things. Gene Myers of Newtown Builders, the owner and CEO of Newtown Builders, which was a plus for us, definitely.
And Bradburn, right?
I believe there's product in there.
Yeah.
Yep. Yep. Heidi Majerek and John Koval, Chris Coble rounded out the group with Chris Coble with Black Label.
And were they generally thinking this is a great opportunity and they see something really great going in there?
Yes. Feedback we had, one of the anecdotes that they kind of relayed is that the development community region-wide, developing in the Denver region, knows the name Carl's Farm. And they know exactly where it is, and it's the bulk of the site, the size, what the potential is already.
And there has been a lot of interest already that has contacted Cushman and Wakefield on it, so.
I have a question. You said that the developers that came through said that there's a potential to have a housing product that Northglenn maybe currently doesn't have in the middle piece. And so I'm not quite sure what that means. Maybe you can explain that a little more. And I guess, does that involve multifamily, that's not rental, that's owner, and what that's going to look like if it is, if we're going to change ordinances to make it attractive?
Yeah.
Construction defects.
Right. I think they highlighted that it probably wasn't necessarily a single-family detached product, but everything on down, and that there would be a market for a mixture of all those things, including ownership of a townhouse, multifamily type project, as well as potential for rentals. And I don't think that a senior product is off the table either.
Any other questions, comments?
Can we make sure and get a copy of the marketing materials, please? That would be interesting to know what exactly they're marketing when there's no plan. Just interesting to see what they're doing.
On the construction defects part, I know that we had representation kind of come in from the development community to talk to us. Has there been any talk about, I know that we had requested to kind of hear both sides of the story before we would look at that. Has there been any discussion of that, of bringing in kind of the other side to hear it.
That was before David took over.
Was it?
He might not
I know it
be
is
aware of
on
it.
the agenda for future items on our list, the construction defects.
I'll look into it tomorrow.
Anything else? Thank you very much. Good news? I know the family's happy. All right, you're gonna stay here. Bees and chickens.
Something seems different here.
A little bit,
A
huh?
little bit. How's the baby doing?
Yeah.
She's good.
Yeah.
She's really good. So.
You're supposed to bring her when you come to evening meetings.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sure you guys would have loved that tonight. My husband said she's been crying a lot, so he's looking forward to meeting you.
We didn't know that. All right.
All right. Thank you, Mayor Downing and council members. Becky Smith here. Basically seeking direction on whether or not to move forward with a proposed bees and chickens ordinance. Last summer, we were asked or directed by management to explore the public's interest in a possible bees or chickens ordinance. And to do that, we hosted 3 public forums, as well as conducted an online survey. And it was brought up in a telephone town hall meeting. The results of all of the public outreach are attached to the memo that was provided. Overall, the public forums, which were facilitated by a subject matter expert, Sundri Kraft, was generally in favor of both a bees and chickens ordinance. The survey results also supported that, as you would see, about, I think it was 84% supported a bees ordinance and 85% a chickens ordinance. There was some concerns that were both expressed in the survey as well as in the forums. And those are listed in the survey results of the surveys as well. And we can discuss any of that specifically. Basically, what we would like to find out from you guys tonight is if we should move forward with drafting an ordinance, and then if the direction is to move forward with an ordinance, what avenue you would like us to do that in. We can do that separately from the development regulations rewrite process, which would get the ordinance in front of you guys sooner, and get an ordinance hopefully adopted if we wanted to pursue that route by next summer when people would be looking to have either bees or chickens. Or we could pursue looking at doing it through the development regulation rewrite process, which would probably be about another year when we would be having an ordinance on the books. So at this time, I'd be happy to answer any questions about the public process that we had, the survey results, or sort of entertain any discussion around the subject.
I just want to say keep them separate in the ordinances.
Okay.
There's a big difference between having bees next door and chickens next door.
Right.
That's true. Okay. Any other comments or questions?
Well, I know that I'll be off council come next Monday, but I'm a no on chickens. I mean, the emails that I have received have been flaming on the chickens with the concern about just the cleanliness of it, the noise, the fact that it'll attract other animals possibly attacking chickens and causing more concern in the city. And so personally, I definitely keep them separate and have huge hearings on them because I think that chickens is a really bad idea, especially when we already have code enforcement concerns within this city.
Carol?
She just spoke for me.
I'm the same.
I beg to differ. I think that the numbers don't lie, and I think that that's why we went through the whole process. Obviously, was to try to see what the community wanted, and it's not even close. I mean, 85%, wants them, and 15% didn't, and so I personally didn't get any, maybe one negative response, but I mean, well outweighed the positive response, people coming up to me at events, and so I mean, if the community had said that they didn't want them, then I think I would be on board and doing what the community wanted. But I think, the numbers, that's overwhelming. People want them, so. And I think it's a great thing. I think it's a progressive thing for our community to do, and it's a good thing.
It's interesting because you get 85% that wants all these, but yet everybody that I talked to didn't. So I don't know where these numbers are coming from. I seriously don't. But
And this was open to everybody.
Well, I
right?
know, but I'm just saying, the people that talk to us personally send a different message. That's all I'm saying to you.
And I can tell you what's going to happen.
So, but I would support separate also. Okay.
And in hearing that, we're essentially supporting the drafting of an ordinance?
Right. Well, no.
Okay.
Yeah. The rewrite. Maybe.
I think we have to separate them. I personally was shocked by these numbers because every email that I've received, every phone call has been, please, whatever you do not allow either one of these in our community. We asked it at one of our ward meetings. Jean, how many? We had maybe 3 people out of the 40 who said, sure, let's have it. So I was just completely shocked by these numbers and was very curious as to see how they had been developed. I am not in favor of having either one based on just what I think are serious issues with, number one, enforcing an ordinance, with some of the issues that Les brought up as well. And so I'm not in favor of it moving forward. Those numbers completely shocked me based on what feedback I've received.
I guess the comment that I would have is, I guess that would be the lesson learned, that when we ask for community input and tell you to come out, we mean for you to come out and publicly say it. So you're not sending an email to all of council, you're sending it to one person, so that's great, but we asked for the input. And hands down, I attended all 3 of the forum sessions, and those are the folks that came out. So the one that voices the loudest is the one that gets paid attention to. That's what I would say. So then if you don't want it, then you better be here for public hearing to say you don't want it.
And that's my thing too, is I think that it does give another forum for them to come out if you don't want it through a public forum. But, I can't get over the numbers, and you can question where they come from. I saw the survey. I didn't think that it was slanted in the least. And like I said before, I think that if the community came out and said no against it, then let's drop it. But it says 85%. I don't know what you can do when you have that overwhelming support in your community. And our fellow communities are doing it. Westminster just passed a similar ordinance, and so it's not like we're the only ones that are doing this.
Who put it to the voters?
They didn't put it to the voters in
Somebody
Westminster.
put it to the voters.
But, and I think it was a great thing, and I was at the forums as well, and I thought it was overwhelmingly supported the forums as well. So, yeah, I think that we should let it move forward, and we can do separate ordinances, and people will have a chance to come out too, to have their voices heard.
Well, I'm fine with separating the ordinances and bringing them forward for a public hearing,
Yeah.
but it just seems real interesting when you have a one-on-one conversation with people, and it's probably those folks that don't like to go to forums and different things also.
We could have done the survey online, though. They had a lot of surveys.
I know,
online
I
submitted,
know.
so.
So, Kara?
So my comment, because I went to them too, but I kind of have a different slant because it's only 326 surveys. And to me, this always speaks volumes in Northglenn. We never get the people to respond. 326 surveys of 36,000 residents. Well,
10%.
So how many residents really came out to say that they want using chickens?
Were they unique surveys? Or was it the same person submitting the same survey results? I mean, it's some of those are online, if they're not unique respondents, is really hard to quantify for me to.
I could go either way though too, Kim. I mean, we could have said that the other way too. And so what I don't understand is that people were so against them, and like I said, I didn't get a whole lot of responses from my constituents, but if they were so against them, why didn't they either come out to the forums or let their voice be heard through the surveys? So.
Well, see, in the town hall meeting, we did get a lot of negativity about the topics.
There was a lot of negativity, period, in that town hall meeting.
Yeah, that's true.
It wasn't
I'm just
real
saying,
positive.
and that was overwhelmingly a no on that one, but.
Kara?
So what I'd like to say on it is, I think you can bring it forward in an ordinance. I'm not sure that I'm supportive myself at this point, because I definitely got a lot of negatives. So on the phone, and I know that wasn't at the meetings. I was at the meetings, yes, they were positive, but it makes sense that the people that want it are going to show up, and then the other people just sit back and wait for council to make a decision. So hopefully they would show up at the public hearing. But honestly, I don't think it's an overwhelming, to me, it's not overwhelming, these surveys, the numbers. So I'm not sure, because you're asking a lot of other residents to put up with a few people that might want to do something and then not take care of the situation the way they should. And I'm not sure where I stand at this point, so. But I would be for drafting the ordinance and having public hearing.
And drafting them separately.
Right.
And I think as part of drafting those, we would bring back a couple of key questions about these ordinances and how you want to craft them for your input at a later date prior to actually drafting fully.
Good. I'm not saying that I don't appreciate everything that you guys, because I know you put a lot of work into getting this all together, but just overwhelmingly, I'm not overwhelmed by doing it, so.
Let's use an example, and I don't know if you like it or not, but I'm trying to think of an example, and maybe it's proposed and it's published, but just as much as you publish the discussions and the meetings on this subject, that it's been proposed to license cats. The people who will show up will be in favor of it by the vast majority.
That's true.
Because the others say,
Yeah, that's exactly right, Gene.
And the same has happened on bees. People who think this is a good idea show up. Those that are opposed, they won't do it. I'm not going to bother going to it.
Well, then,
Then
I mean,
that's
that's
like
not the
a
way
lesson
government works,
learned.
so if they don't want something, then they need to show up. I mean,
No, you're the representative.
well, I'm telling you, numbers are telling me a totally different story. I didn't get those
I just
calls.
said those people showed up that are in favor of it. The nays don't show up.
Okay, but so because the nays don't show up, that means that we automatically don't go through with something?
No, that's how it means automatically. You take and say, what does my co-community want? Out of all the people in my area, how many want it?
I don't know what else we can do. I think that when this came up, the whole thing was to get community involvement, community engagement in this topic, and that's why we went through all of these steps, through the forums, through the surveys. I mean, I don't know what else, I don't know how else you can try to get community engaged.
Did you reach
For it or against it, I don't
Did you
care.
reach 1% of the residents?
We did everything we could. Please tell me how else we could have done more on this particular subject.
That's what I'm saying, is you got the input from a small group, and you're saying that's the will of the people. I think that's sort of what you were saying too. And it's not the will of the people. Go ahead and adopt the ordinance, maybe repealing it soon afterwards. When other people find out, my God, they did it. I got bees in my backyard flying around, damn chickens.
You know what? It happens that way all the time. You know, they see that you're going to go through with something that they oppose, and then boom, all of a sudden you're the evil.
When they find out you did it.
Yeah, and that's what I was going to say to you, Mayor, is, you know, the people that are passionate about the bees and chickens showed up because they want it. And like Gene said, the other people are like, there's no way they're going to do it. Well, and we sit here and we say, well, you know, 85% of the people, you know, 85% of the people that were surveyed want it, so we're going to go with the majority. And
You know, it goes back to the marijuana thing too. I mean, if they don't come out, I mean, what are we supposed to, I mean, it's tough, you know.
Exactly.
I mean, it's-
Communication is always tough.
It is,
Yeah,
but
it is.
I just don't know what else we could have done, is what I'm saying, Mayor. I mean, I really think we tried.
well, there's nothing.
So,
Okay,
It's the way it's going to roll out.
all right, is there any other comments, questions? Okay, so it would be separate ordinances, and then you'll come back again with some key components.
Some key components
to the
of each of them,
ordinance, right?
and information to establish what other communities are doing in that context.
All right.
Okay.
All right, thank you very much. Next is Community Development Block Grant. Brooke?
Please, fire. Go ahead.
I'm trying to be ahead of some Citizens Affairs Board and a few others. Based on the decisions that were made in this, the housing rehab cannot go forward. Why?
I'll try to be as succinct as possible. Here's what we learned, is that Adams County can't afford to administer in an internal and minor home repair program for the communities.
Very good. That would be a good answer to give to them.
And I will also say that when we started on this journey 3.5 years ago, those were our very same concerns, is that the administrative costs were not being accurately reflected. And in fact, that's what we have learned. And keep in mind that we are dealing with a new, I'll scoot this back because I'm getting feedback. We have new administration with Adams County and the Neighborhood Services Program for this. And so they were sort of inherited this dynamic, and they've readily recognized that. So with that being said, that's part of the foundation for not recommending moving forward with the same program for next year. Absolutely.
All right, you want to give your little presentation first?
Sure, I'd be happy to. So I'll just kind of touch on the highlights of the staff report, and please feel free to jump in at any time, and good evening, Mayor and Council. Brooks Kubota here tonight. First off, for next year, we are looking at about $214,000 for CDBG funds to be appropriated for the city. And as I outlined in the memo, there's two main reasons for that. One is the substantial population growth that Commerce City has received, which has had a major shift in the way the formula calculations are for our funds. And then also, we received the benefit of a clerical error with the Adams County staff in terms of how much money we received for last year with, I think it was approximately $265,000. The year previous, it was $239,000. Because of the population change and the oversight, that's the reason for the change there. With this year's program, we combined 2013 and 2014 monies for a total of $465,000, in which we are going to be end up serving approximately 70 residents. The reason why it's written the way it is because not all of those grants have been closed out yet, and we hope to have them done by the end of the year. Right now, there's approximately 24 grants that are in the process of either being bid out or being scheduled for construction. And so right now, it's about half and half. Half are scheduled for construction, and the other half are still scheduled to get bids. This is another challenge that we found with this program, especially when we were administering it for Federal Heights, Adams County, Northglenn, and Commerce City, is that there's a very small pool of contractors willing to do this low bid amount of scope of work. And so the contractors that they've retained have been all good quality work so far. We've only had one incident, that at least in Northglenn that I'm aware of, where we had an issue that was corrected. That being said, the amount of work for each individual project takes so much time. It's taken a lot longer to complete the projects because of that. So that's another factor in the decision here for moving forward. The last part that I'll touch on here in terms of the recommendation tonight, which is to move with a curbs, gutter, and sidewalk program, which is, I think, a CDBG issue in general, and it's not specific to just us, is primarily the fact that with CDBG monies from HUD, there is what they call an environmental assessment. There's a Tier 1 and a Tier 2 clearance, and effectively what ends up happening is if a project gets to a certain size and scope, you have to do an environmental assessment, which in and of itself can cost upwards to $60,000 and take several months to perform. Because of that, we look to try to find projects that don't trigger an EA, because we spend more of the money getting it cleared to do the work than provides a meaningful project. So, for example, the Ralston House, we had talked earlier about that being a potential project. We would have to do an environmental assessment for that project, and couple that with the fact that we get such a small amount of money, we would literally have very little money to put toward a project like Ralston House. And so that's one of the major challenges we have. Adjunct to that, the HUD is putting increasing pressure on the urban counties to perform within the calendar year. And what makes that very difficult is, for instance, in the memo I mentioned that the funds are typically available in April and March. Because of the congressional gridlock at the federal level this year, the monies weren't available until August for 2015 dollars. And so the Larson Park project that we're doing now, we could not actually issue a notice of award to the contractor, even though we've been working on this since July. We couldn't issue a notice of award until the funds were actually released, and then getting the appropriate documents and everything else in place. So it's an increasing challenge with CDBG, and in fact, one of the things that we hear all the time is that this type of program is typically a curb, gutter, and sidewalk project because of the amount of effort it takes to do anything beyond that. The last comment I'll leave you with on this is that 2 weeks ago, met with a new appointee director from Washington, D.C., who is going to serve as the local urban county rep and reports only to the deputy director in D.C., with the primary purpose of trying to fix what is, I think most people agree, has strong, huge challenges in terms of how the HUD administers these programs through the local jurisdictions. And I'm hopeful that this person is coming with the right perspective, and I think they understand our plight, but we're also talking about a federal bureaucracy that has very specific processes in place that are not going to change readily overnight. But I am cautiously optimistic that the efforts that the county has made is we're moving in the right direction.
I'm wondering, are there other communities that are looking at pulling out of that program?
So Commerce City actually meets the 50,000 population and can actually become what they call a direct recipient. One of the things that is going to be a challenge, and this is, they're getting almost $500,000 of the urban county designation because of their population count. One of the things that they're struggling with is they want to do it, but I think what we're hearing is that it's probably going to require 2 full-time FTEs just for them to be able to do the administration and the compliance requirements for it. And the way that the HUD works is that you only get, I think, up to 20% of the appropriation for admin costs. Otherwise, you got to fund it out of your own general fund, and that's the challenge that everybody runs into. Is most of the jurisdictions that are direct recipients want to fund the staff through the HUD appropriation, so it doesn't affect their general fund. So they're struggling with that decision right now, and they may or may not be moving forward. There's advantages and disadvantages for us if they were to become a direct recipient, because then their allocation would redistribute, but there'd still be fewer funds available.
Do we have any projects that would not be realized if, in fact, we pulled out? Is there anything waiting to be done?
No.
No.
Once again, because of this window of trying to avoid doing an environmental assessment and increasing costs and prolonging the process, there's such a narrow width of eligible programs and projects that I would say are plug and go that you can readily do and not require a lot of staff resource.
Thank you. Any other questions?
I just have one question.
Yes.
Do you know roughly how many people applied but we weren't able to help them, or wait list?
We had approximately about 120 people reach out and request information. Right now, we have about, I think it's about 12 or 13 people that are on a theoretical wait list. I will tell you that we will very likely not be able to serve them unless the final 12 that haven't been given bids yet are going to be grab rails and replacement of the water heater. What we're running into and what has been a challenge for the program is that someone comes in to have a furnace repaired or replaced. We go in there and then all of a sudden it's asbestos wrapped ductwork, and so by code we have to fix that, and so then the price increases for that individual, and in some cases has exceeded the $7,000 to do that.
You know, the senior hub has, I think it's called a handyman program that maybe we could refer some of those folks to if in fact
Would be happy to do
utilize
that. Yep.
this.
Yeah. And once again, I think a lot of these folks have needs that are greater than what funding is available as well.
I was just hoping that where it said service to 70 residents, are those actually people, 70 people, or 70 homes?
Homes.
Okay, good. So it could be more than that.
Correct. I mean, there was one that I was personally involved with where I think the gentleman had five kids, and was either part-time or unemployed.
Oh, okay, great. So it's a
Are you going to see
plus.
chickens?
All right. Any other questions or comments? So the recommend,
Oh, I have a couple.
okay.
So what else was considered? I mean, we have just the one item that was considered. What else was considered for this program? What are other communities doing using their funds? And can you send me more information about this whole HUD wanting to have these expenditures done within the calendar year?
Sure.
Because I've not heard of any of that at all, and I deal with CDBG funds on a daily basis. There are different funds because of the state allocation, but that seems even more ridiculous than what their normal regulations are, and I have a really hard time understanding that they're asking for that, because it does take so much more of a process to get those funds. And typically they're typically on a 3-year, you have to use those funds within 3 years, not within a calendar year when we don't get them awarded until mid-year.
That's,
So
yes.
I'm really concerned about that and whether or not that is an interpretation from our county representation. And if that's the case, then I have even more concern, because we also work with the county at the state, and I'll just leave it at that.
Okay. I will be happy to put together some more information, but just to briefly respond to that, my understanding is that it was not just Adams County, it was also Arapahoe that has received similar comments from the HUD. I know that in the specific case of what is going on with Adams County is that when you refer to the 3 years, it has been explained by HUD staff that the 3-year is not a function of anything anymore. It's in reference to 1.5 times your total annual appropriation is what you're allowed to carry as a running tally for your CDBG balance within any given year. One of the challenges that Adams County had is that because we did not do a minor home repair program last year and the year before, even in our case, we basically had $465,000 that needed to be spent. Adams County in total had about $4.3 million that they needed to spend to get down to 2.4 in order for them to be in compliance by the end of this year, or they risk losing whatever balance was not spent by the end of the year. I believe that there's been increased pressure is the way I've heard it, and I think it was somewhat validated by the new director that we spoke to, that there is a push to get the balances below the 1.5 times, and if not, for the full year expenditure, and that's kind of what we've been up against. But I'll be happy to provide more information on that. But the 3-year formula anymore is not being adhered to. It is whatever your running balance of 1.5 times your annual appropriation budget is what you're allowed. And they're coming down hard on it.
And then what other options were considered? I've had discussion, our residents keep bringing up fencing along Huron, on South Huron. And, they put in, I'm not even sure where it is, but I have one resident who insists that it was part of the plan when all the other arterial fencing was done with the posts with the N in them and all that. And one post was put in, and he's just up in arms over why hasn't anything been done, and the whole thing looks awful and all of that. So was there any consideration to any of that?
Not for a fence, for a fence program.
I know that's been frowned upon in the past, but
This is actually
close to this.
one, as I understand it, and this is 3 directors at the county ago, that the prior director to that director allowed the fence program to go forward, and the HUD approved it. And once everything was paid out, the HUD came back and audited and said that was an inappropriate use of funds, and then penalized the county, and then did a broad-based audit of the entire program. The then director who took over to clean that up apparently represented to me that all of that had been resolved and clarified, and that the proper documentation had been put forward to substantiate why it was allowed. As far as as for us, for this year and previous years, earlier this year, we put together a menu of options of what might be available of programs to do. And when we start getting down to the brass tacks of how much staff resources we have and what we can do, we went with the curb and gutter and sidewalk because it's an ongoing program and it's been used before and it's something that will work and allows us an opportunity for the county to figure out what they're doing as well as for us to figure out what's going to happen with Commerce City and everything else.
Do you have a map of where you want to use those funds?
So,
This program, or how you plan on
yes.
allocating that?
We have identified the census tracts within the city that are eligible for the work, and what we're in the process of doing right now is overlaying it's not the pavement condition index that you heard about earlier today. They actually have a sidewalk, curb and gutter, and accessibility index that they have. And so what we're going to do is overlay the two to see where the areas that are eligible that meet the low-income qualification, and then identify those for the scope in the application. My goal is to try to spread it out over as much of the city as we can. There's a couple of census tracts on the west side, and there's a few more. It's the distribution of the census tracts that are income eligible are more east than west, but we're going to try to figure out a way to balance it.
Could you share those census tracts
Absolutely.
with us so
Yep.
we all know where some of those areas are? Because we can't do it via census tracts rather than household and
Sure.
some of those things, so that would be nice for,
Well-
especially for the new council members who are going to be coming in who may not know what's from the previous discussions.
Absolutely, and what I'll also be happy to do is we'll put that PDF together, and we'll also send you the link from the HUD that actually allows you just to click over neighborhoods, and it'll bring up a pop box that'll show you how many residents are LMI qualified and what the percentage is of the total population.
Okay, well, and I don't disagree with what you're proposing at all, but I will say about 2 years ago, maybe a little bit longer than 2 years ago, Councilwoman Susan Klein asked and staff said that they would start looking at a fence program. And so I'm thinking, that is something very valid that we need to do. And I know that we have a lot of projects on our plate, but this was something that was asked a long time ago and probably needs to be looked at again.
Okay,
Because
absolutely.
I know that for a fact.
We'd be happy to do that.
Okay.
To that point, then I'll stop. Is one of the things that the county is trying to promote, and I brought this up prior, is that rather than parsing out every year $1.7 million to literally potentially between 6 and 15 different projects, is having the communities look and basically identify a $1.7 million project. And say in 2017, Northglenn does $1.7 million, a $1.7 million project, and then Commerce City in 2018, and then we go through a rotation where we are in a 5 or 6 year, depending on how many communities we have participating at the time, that we basically would look at doing something like that, where you could have a bigger impact at one time, and then it would make the administration of the funds a lot easier for all people considered. The issue here is that you don't know each year whether the feds are going to appropriate those dollars, and you don't know when they're going to be available, and so there's obviously risk involved. So that's the reason why we've done it the way we have. But that's something we're going to get pressure to.
And I'm looking at more at a local level, more than for the feds,
Right.
so, right.
Okay.
All right. Thank you very much. Any other questions before this one? Okay.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you very much. Do you have anything? I just have 2 things that I just want to mention. Tonight is Gene Weineke's and Leslie Carrico's last meeting, and just want to tell you thank you for all you've done, both of you, and we will miss you, seriously.
Thank
Yes,
you.
Thank you.
And Wayne, even though you're not here.
Yes, and Wayne, I'm sorry about that. I can see him right there. Kyle's kind of putting his arm around him. Okay, and then just one other thing, and I don't know if everybody knows Robert Sakaguchi. He was a former council member up in Broomfield, but he suffered a fatal heart attack a day or so ago. And so I just want to let everybody know about that. So, okay. All right, with that.
Hold on.
Yes.
I want to say something.
Oh, well, go ahead.
It's been a pleasure serving with you.
Well, thank you.
Your energy and enthusiasm, I don't know where you get it at, and I don't know how anybody would keep up crazy.
Oh, well,
But it's been great.
well, thank you so much.
And Wayne, what can I say about Wayne? The jokester, you know, who doesn't love Wayne? But especially Eugene. When we first met each other, I don't think we really liked each other to begin with.
I like you.
No. But over the years serving with you, I honestly, I gained a healthy respect for your knowledge and what you bring to council, and I think all of us learned a lot from you.
Thanks.
And certainly appreciate it.
Thanks.
Thank you.
All right.
You're a nice guy.
Thank you very much. We're adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.